Hello everybody. My name is Daniel Carter. Never imagined that my life would unravel so spectacularly because of a woman who was supposed to love me. But perfection is an illusion, isn't it? Especially when you're living with someone who's as good at lying as my wife was. Her name is Melissa Thompson. We met in college. She had long blonde hair and those piercing blue eyes that could make anyone melt. We were young, ambitious, and in love. Within a couple of years, we got married, and soon after, we welcomed our 2 kids, Olivia and Benjamin. Life seemed perfect, or at least, that's what I thought. In the beginning, everything was great. Melissa worked part-time as a graphic designer while I managed a successful construction company. We made time for each other despite our busy schedules. Or so I thought. The first signs of trouble began subtly. Melissa started appearing at home less often, claiming she was working late or attending networking events. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, we both had demanding jobs, and it wasn't unusual for one of us to work late. But as the weeks went by, her absences became more frequent. She stopped picking up my phone calls, ignoring my texts with excuses like "meeting ran long" or "forgot my phone." At first, I brushed it off. Work stress, I told myself. Maybe she needed some space. But the nagging feeling grew stronger. I started noticing changes in her behavior. She dressed differently, more provocatively, more daring. Her makeup became bolder, her outfits tighter. It wasn't just for work, she did it even when we were alone. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off, saying she wanted to feel confident and sexy, but confidence and sexiness weren't the problem. The problem was the way she looked at me when she said those things, like she was mocking me, testing me. Like she knew something I didn't. And then there were the nights she stayed out late, coming home with flushed cheeks and a faint scent of cologne clinging to her clothes. She'd brush it off as nothing, claiming it was just from a client. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One evening, after another long day at the office, I decided to surprise Melissa. She had mentioned earlier that she was going to be working late on a project, so I figured I'd bring her some dinner and maybe spend a little quality time together. When I arrived home, I noticed her car parked outside, just as expected. But as I approached the house, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Melissa was standing near the front door, laughing and chatting with none other than my brother, Ethan Carter. They were all smiles, their body language unmistakably intimate. My heart sank as I realized how blind I had been. All those nights she claimed to be working late, all those missed calls, this was what she had been doing. A wave of nausea washed over me as I realized how blind I had been. All those nights she claimed to be working late, all those missed calls, this was what she had been doing. I stood there, frozen in place, unable to believe what I was seeing. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted, was flirting with my own brother right outside our home. A wave of nausea washed over me as I realized how blind I had been. All those nights she claimed to be working late, all those missed calls, this was what she had been doing. I wanted to confront them then and there, but something held me back. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what was going on before I made any accusations. So, I quietly slipped away, my mind racing with possibilities. Was this a one-time thing? Or had it been happening for longer than I could imagine? Over the next few days, I paid closer attention to Melissa's behavior. She became even more distant, barely acknowledging me when she was home. When she did speak, it was always with a tone of irritation, as if I was bothering her. Her lies grew more elaborate, each one more convincing than the last. She fabricated stories about where she had been, who she had met, and what she had done. I tried to stay calm, but the constant barrage of falsehoods wore me down. I began to feel like I was living in a house of mirrors, where nothing was real and everything was distorted by Melissa's manipulations. One night, after another long day at the office, I found myself driving aimlessly through the city. My thoughts were chaotic, swirling around the images of Melissa and Ethan. I couldn't stop thinking about them, their laughter, their closeness, their blatant disregard for my feelings. It was maddening, and I needed answers. I needed proof. Without really planning it, I found myself heading toward the house. I parked a few blocks away, just as I had before, and waited. As expected, Melissa emerged from the house shortly after 9, flanked by Ethan. They walked together, laughing and chatting, their body language unmistakably intimate. My stomach churned with a mixture of anger and despair. This time, I didn't wait. I followed them closely, determined to uncover the truth once and for all. They walked to a nearby park, the same one I had seen them enter before. This time, I didn't hesitate. I parked my car and entered the park behind them, careful to keep my distance. They took a secluded bench, and I sat on a nearby swing set, watching them intently. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened to their conversation, low and seductive. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, knowing full well what I might find out. Taking a deep breath, I focused on their interaction. Ethan leaned in close, whispering something that made Melissa giggle like a schoolgirl. Their fingers brushed against each other under the table, subtle but undeniable. For a moment, no one noticed me. I sat there, frozen in horror, unable to believe what I was seeing. Then, Melissa glanced up and caught sight of me standing there. "Daniel," she gasped, her face flushing with embarrassment. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't speak. The words caught in my throat, choked by the overwhelming sense of betrayal and disgust. I stared at her, my mind reeling, trying to process the scene before me. Melissa, the woman I had loved and trusted, was having an affair with my brother right in front of me. The reality of it hit me like a sledgehammer, shattering any remaining illusions I had held on to. What is this?" I finally managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. Melissa's face twisted in anger. "How dare you barge in here like this? This has nothing to do with you." "Oh, really?" I spat. "Then explain it to me, Melissa. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me for months. It looks like you're having an affair with my brother." She shrugged, her eyes narrowing. "Maybe. What's it to you? You're too busy with your precious work to notice me. Why shouldn't I have some fun?" Her audacity was staggering. Here she was, caught red-handed, and yet she acted like I was the one in the wrong. The pain and confusion surged through me, making it hard to breathe. How could she do this to me? How could she betray me with my own brother? Before I could respond, Melissa's phone buzzed on the bench. She glanced at it briefly, then tossed it aside with a dismissive wave. "It's probably just another client," she said, her tone bored, but something about the way she dismissed it struck me as odd. I picked up the phone and scrolled through her recent messages. What I saw made my blood run cold. There were dozens of texts, not just from Ethan, but from others. Explicit photos, lewd comments, plans for future rendezvous. It was clear that Melissa's infidelity went far beyond just my brother. She had been playing me for months, maybe even years. Every lie, every excuse, every missed call, it all came crashing down in that moment that I dropped the phone, my hands shaking with rage. "You've been cheating on me with multiple people? How many more, Melissa? How many more?" She shrugged, her expression indifferent. "Does it really matter? You're not going to change anything by knowing." The word stung, cutting deep into my soul. She was beyond redemption, beyond reason. There was no point in trying to salvage anything from this mess. Our marriage was over, and there was nothing left to save. With a heavy heart, I turned and walked out of the park, leaving Melissa and Ethan to their twisted games. As I drove away, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I had to do. The drive home was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, and my vision was clouded by an overwhelming mix of rage, disbelief, and heartache. How could this have happened? How could Melissa, my wife, the mother of my children, betray me with my own brother? It felt like a cruel joke, something out of a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I parked the car in the driveway, but I didn't move. I sat there, staring at the house that had once been our sanctuary, now a prison of lies and deceit. Olivia and Benjamin were probably asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath their feet. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I couldn't let them see me like this, broken, defeated, consumed by betrayal. As I walked through the front door, I heard Ethan's voice echoing in my head, his lame attempts at casual conversation. "Hey, Daniel, how's it going?" He was supposed to be family, someone who should have respected our boundaries. Instead, he had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way possible. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sank into the couch, letting the cold bottle rest against my forehead. The icy touch did little to numb the pain gnawing at my insides. I replayed the scene over and over again in my mind, Melissa's flushed face, Ethan's smug expression, the way they looked at each other like they shared some secret only they knew. It made me sick. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced down and saw it was a message from Melissa. "Daniel, we need to talk." Talk? What was there left to say? She had already said enough with her actions. Still, curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the message. "I know you're upset, but this isn't what it looks like. Please, just give me a chance to explain." Explain what? How she had been having sex with my brother behind my back. How she had lied to me for months, maybe even years. No, there was no explanation that could make this right. But part of me, a small, desperate part, wanted to hear her try. I typed back quickly, my fingers trembling with anger. "Explain what, Melissa? You've been sleeping with my brother. How do you explain that?" There was a pause before her reply came. "It wasn't planned, Daniel. Things just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I scoffed. Things just happened? Was that really the best excuse she could come up with? It was insulting, almost laughable if it weren't so tragic. Things don't just happen, Melissa. You made a choice. Both of you did. Her response was immediate, filled with venom. "You're being dramatic, Daniel. We can fix this. Just give me another chance." Another chance? After everything she had done? The audacity of her words cut deeper than any physical wound. She was manipulating me again, trying to twist the situation to her advantage. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. Not anymore. I deleted the conversation and threw my phone onto the couch beside me. I needed to think, to process everything that had happened. But every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Melissa and Ethan together, their bodies entwined in a grotesque mockery of intimacy. It was a scene I couldn't unsee, one that would haunt me forever. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. Dark circles underlined my eyes, and my body ached from the tension of the night before. I dragged myself out of bed and went through the motions of getting ready for work, though my mind was anywhere but focused. Every step felt heavy, every task meaningless. How could I concentrate on anything when my entire world had been shattered? At the office, I tried to keep up appearances, but my colleagues noticed the change in me. They asked if everything was okay, if I needed to take some time off. I smiled weakly, assuring them that I was fine, that it was just a rough patch. But inside, I was unraveling. How could I tell them the truth? That my wife was cheating on me with my brother? That my life had become a twisted soap opera where everyone played their roles except me? By lunchtime, I couldn't take it anymore. I excused myself early, claiming I wasn't feeling well, and drove straight to Ethan's apartment. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait any longer to get them. When I pulled up to the building, I saw him sitting on the porch, sipping a cup of coffee as if nothing was wrong. As if he hadn't betrayed me in the worst possible way. "Ethan," I said calmly as I approached, "I figured you'd show up sooner or later." He looked up, startled. "Daniel, man, what's going on? You knew I'd find out eventually, didn't you? I spat, my voice shaking with barely contained fury. You knew this whole time, and you didn't think to tell me? Ethan sighed, setting his cup down on the table. Look, Daniel, it's not that simple. Melissa and I started talking more, sharing things. One thing led to another, and before you knew it, you were fucking my wife. I finished for him, my voice cold and harsh. Ethan flinched at the word, but I didn't care. He deserved every bit of the disgust I felt. I'm sorry, Daniel, he muttered, looking genuinely remorseful for the first time. I never meant for it to go this far. I love you, bro. You have to believe that. Love? I laughed bitterly. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. If you loved me, you would have stopped it before it went too far. But you didn't. You chose her over me. He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. No, Ethan. Save it. I don't want to hear your excuses. You've both made your choices, and now you'll have to live with the consequences. With that, I turned and stormed out of the apartment complex, leaving Ethan sitting there, stunned and silent. As I drove away, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. For the first time in days, I knew exactly what I had to do. That evening, I confronted Melissa when she finally returned home. She walked in, her usual confident demeanor faltering when she saw the look on my face. Daniel, she began, but I held up a hand to stop her. Don't, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Just don't. I know everything. Her face paled, and for a moment, she looked genuinely scared. But then, the mask slipped back into place, and she gave me that same condescending smile she always wore when she thought she could manipulate me. Daniel, please, she pleaded, stepping closer. We can work through this. It doesn't have to end like this. I took a step back, shaking my head. Work through this? Melissa, you've been having sex with my brother. There's no coming back from that. She shrugged, her expression dripping with contempt. So what? People make mistakes. We can move past it. Move past it? I repeated, incredulous. How can you even suggest that? You've destroyed everything we had. Do you even understand what you've done? She rolled her eyes, her patience wearing thin. Oh, please. You're always so uptight, so controlling. These guys, she gestured to Ethan, they make me feel alive. They give me what you never could. Her words cut deeper than any knife ever could. She was taunting me, reveling in my pain. And worst of all, she was right. I had been predictable, reliable, dependable. I had built my life around her, sacrificed everything for her happiness. And in return, she had thrown it all away for a fleeting thrill. Before I could respond, Melissa's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She glanced at it briefly, then tossed it aside with a dismissive wave. It's probably just another client, she said, her tone bored, but something about the way she dismissed it struck me as odd. I picked up the phone and scrolled through her recent messages. What I saw made my blood run cold. There were dozens of texts, not just from Ethan, but from others. Explicit photos, lewd comments, plans for future rendezvous. It was clear that Melissa's infidelity went far beyond just my brother. She had been playing me for months, maybe even years. Every lie, every excuse, every missed call, it all came crashing down in that moment that I dropped the phone, my hands shaking with rage. You've been cheating on me with multiple people? How many more, Melissa? How many more? She shrugged, her expression indifferent. Does it really matter? You're not going to change anything by knowing. The word stung, cutting deep into my soul. She was beyond redemption, beyond reason. There was no point in trying to salvage anything from this mess. Our marriage was over, and there was nothing left to save. With a heavy heart, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving Melissa standing there, stunned and silent. As I descended the stairs and exited the house, I felt a strange sense of relief. She was gone, at least for now. But I knew this was far from over. The drive home from Ethan's apartment was a blur of anger and disbelief. I couldn't shake the image of Melissa and my brother together, their betrayal searing itself into my memory. Every streetlight, every passing car seemed to mock me, reminding me of how blind I had been. How could I have missed the signs? How could I have trusted them both so completely? I parked the car in the driveway but didn't move. I sat there, staring at the house that had once been our sanctuary, now a prison of lies and deceit. Olivia and Benjamin were probably asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath their feet. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I couldn't let them see me like this, broken, defeated, consumed by betrayal. As I walked through the front door, the silence inside felt suffocating. My heart pounded in my chest, and I knew I couldn't avoid confronting Melissa any longer. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing was wrong. Her eyes flicked up when she heard me enter, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. "Daniel," she said, her voice soft and almost pleading. "We need to talk." I laughed bitterly. "Talk? What more do you have to say, Melissa? You've already said enough with your actions." She stood up, taking a step towards me. "Please, Daniel. Let me explain. It wasn't planned. Things just got out of hand." "Things got out of hand?" I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're sleeping with my brother, Melissa. How do things get out of hand to that point?" Her face flushed with anger, but she quickly composed herself. "It's not what it looks like. Ethan means nothing to me. It was just a mistake." "A mistake?" I spat, my fists clenching. "You call having sex with my brother a mistake? How many times, Melissa? How many times did you betray me under my own roof?" She hesitated, her eyes darting away. "It only happened a few times." "I swear." "Only a few times?" I shook my head, unable to believe the audacity of her lies. "You've been lying to me for months, maybe even years. And now you expect me to believe that it was just a few times?" Melissa's face crumpled, tears welling up in her eyes. "Please, Daniel. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I was lonely, and you were always so busy with work. Ethan was there, and he understood me in ways you never did." "Understood you?" I roared, my patience completely gone. "You think cheating on me is something I don't understand? You think sleeping with my own brother is okay because you felt lonely?" She backed away, her hands trembling. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought it would be harmless. But I realize now that I made a terrible mistake." "A terrible mistake?" I laughed harshly. "You destroyed our family, Melissa. You betrayed me with my brother, in our own home, while our children slept upstairs. There's no coming back from that." Melissa's tears flowed freely now, but I felt no sympathy. Not after everything she had done. "What are you going to do, Daniel?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Are you going to leave me? Take the kids?" I stared at her, feeling a mix of disgust and pity. "Yes, Melissa. I'm leaving. And I'm taking the kids. You've proven that you can't be trusted around them, let alone around me." With that, I turned and stormed upstairs, packing a bag for myself and the kids. I knew I couldn't stay in that house another minute. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating me with memories of betrayal and lies. As I packed, I could hear Melissa sobbing downstairs, but I ignored it. There was nothing left to say. Nothing left to salvage. By the time I came back downstairs, Melissa had composed herself again. She looked at me with those same piercing blue eyes, but now they held no warmth, only desperation. "Please, Daniel. Don't do this. We can fix this. We can make it work. I shook my head, my voice cold and firm. There's nothing left to fix, Melissa. You chose your path, and now you'll have to live with the consequences. I gathered the kids, explaining that we were going on a little trip for a few days. They didn't ask too many questions, but I could see the confusion in their eyes. Olivia, especially, seemed worried. "Why isn't Mommy coming with us?" she asked, her small voice filled with concern that I knelt down beside her, forcing a smile. "Mommy needs some time to sort things out, sweetheart. But don't worry, Daddy's here, and we'll take care of each other." Benjamin tugged at my sleeve, his brow furrowed. "Is Mommy in trouble?" I hugged him tightly, swallowing the lump in my throat. "No, buddy. Everything will be fine. We just need some space right now." As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror, catching one last glimpse of Melissa standing in the doorway, her face pale and drawn. For a moment, I felt a pang of regret. This wasn't the woman I had married, the woman I had loved. This was someone else, someone twisted and cruel. But the pain of her betrayal overshadowed any lingering affection. Over the next few days, I struggled to keep my emotions in check. I focused on keeping life as normal as possible for Olivia and Benjamin, taking them to parks, playing games, and doing everything I could to shield them from the chaos surrounding us. But internally, I was a wreck. Every night, I lay awake, replaying the scene in the park, the texts, the lies. It was all too much to bear. One evening, as I was putting the kids to bed, my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Daniel, please. Let's talk. We need to fix this. It's tearing us apart." I stared at the message, my blood boiling with rage. Fix this? How could he possibly think this could be fixed? He had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and now he wanted to pretend like we could move past it. I responded coldly, almost mockingly, "There's nothing left to fix, Ethan. You made your choice. Now live with it." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a barrage of texts flooded my phone, each one more frantic and desperate than the last. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I know I've hurt you, but please, just give me a chance to explain." Explain what? How he had been having sex with my wife behind my back. How he had lied to me for months, maybe even years. No, there was no explanation that could make this right. But another part of me, a darker, vengeful part, wanted to hear him try. I wanted to see how far he would go to justify his actions, to twist the truth until it suited his narrative. I called him, my voice dripping with disdain. "What do you want, Ethan?" He sighed heavily on the other end, his voice trembling with guilt. "Daniel, man, I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just got caught up in the moment. Please, you have to believe me." I laughed bitterly. "Caught up in the moment? You were sleeping with my wife, Ethan. How do you get caught up in that?" He paused, clearly struggling to find the right words. "It wasn't planned, Daniel. Things just got complicated. Melissa and I, we had a connection. Something neither of us expected." "A connection?" I spat, my anger flaring. "You're talking about a connection? You had sex with my wife. How do you call that a connection?" Ethan's voice grew desperate. "Please, Daniel. I know I messed up. But we can still fix this. We're family. We can get through this together." "Family?" I repeated, incredulous. "You destroyed that when you decided to sleep with my wife. There's no coming back from that, Ethan. You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I truly am. But I can't undo what's been done." "No," I said, my voice firm. "And neither can I. This is over. For good." With that, I hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of relief. Ethan had finally admitted his guilt, though it was too little, too late. He had chosen Melissa over me, and now he would have to live with the consequences of his actions. As for Melissa, well, she was already paying the price for her betrayal. Despite the mounting tension, I remained committed to protecting myself and my children from her toxic influence. I hired a private investigator to monitor her movements, ensuring she adhered to the terms of the restraining order. Any attempt she made to contact me or the kids was swiftly reported, and the authorities were quick to intervene. She was trapped in a web of her own making, and there was no escape, but Melissa wasn't finished yet. She continued to harass me, sending threatening messages, leaving voicemails filled with venom, and even showing up at public places I frequented. One afternoon, while picking up groceries, I saw her standing across the parking lot, staring at me with those same piercing blue eyes that used to make my heart skip a beat. Now, they only filled me with dread. She approached me cautiously, her face pale and drawn. "Daniel, please. We need to talk. Just 5 minutes. That's all I ask." I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. "No, Melissa. There's nothing left to say. You chose your path, and now you'll have to live with the consequences." Her expression hardened, her desperation palpable. "You can't do this to me, Daniel. You can't just throw me away like I mean nothing." I stared at her, incredulous. "Throw you away? You threw away our marriage, Melissa. You threw away everything we had built together. Don't act like the victim here." She lunged at me, her nails digging into my arms. "You don't understand. I needed more. You couldn't give me what I needed." I shoved her away, my patience completely gone. "No, Melissa. You didn't need more, you needed to grow up. To take responsibility for your actions instead of running away from them. But you'll never change, will you? You'll always be the same selfish, manipulative bitch you've always been." Her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, Daniel, don't do this. I can change. I swear." I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and grating in the silent parking lot. "Change? After everything you've done? No, Melissa. Some things can't be undone. And I'm done playing your games." With that, I walked away, leaving her sobbing and cursing behind me. As I drove home, I felt a strange sense of vindication. Melissa had caused too much damage, left too many scars. I wanted her to understand the full weight of her actions, to feel the same pain and despair she had inflicted upon me. And so, I devised a plan, a final act of retribution that would ensure she never forgot the price of her betrayal. First, I turned my attention to her professional life. With the evidence I had gathered through the private investigator, I made sure that every potential employer in the city knew about Melissa's history of fraud and deceit. Her reputation was in tatters, and no one in their right mind would hire someone with such a tainted past. Every interview she attended ended in rejection, every application returned unanswered. She was blacklisted, her career prospects shattered beyond repair. Next, I focused on her social circle. Melissa had always prided herself on her connections, her ability to charm and manipulate those around her. But now, with the truth out in the open, her friends began to distance themselves. They saw her for who she truly was, a manipulative liar who cared only for her own pleasure and gain. Invitations stopped coming, phone calls went unanswered, and soon, she found herself isolated and alone. The glamorous parties, the lavish vacations, the superficial friendships, they were all gone, replaced by an empty existence devoid of meaning. That I also made sure that Melissa's family understood the depth of her betrayal. I reached out to her parents, her siblings, and even distant relatives, sharing the evidence I had collected. At first, they defended her, refusing to believe the worst about their beloved daughter. But as the details emerged, as the truth became undeniable, their support waned. They distanced themselves from her, cutting off financial assistance and emotional support. For the first time in her life, Melissa was truly on her own. Despite the mounting pressure, Melissa refused to give up. She tried to fight back, launching a smear campaign against me, spreading rumors and half-truths in a desperate attempt to salvage what little remained of her reputation. But I was prepared for her tactics. I hired a team of legal experts to monitor her online activity, ensuring that any false statements or defamatory comments were swiftly countered with the truth. Every lie she told was met with irrefutable evidence, every accusation debunked with cold, hard facts. She was fighting a losing battle, and deep down, she knew it. Then came the day that sealed her fate. Melissa, in a fit of rage, violated the restraining order by showing up at my workplace. She stormed into the office, demanding to see me, ignoring the protests of my colleagues. Security was called, and within minutes, the police arrived. Melissa was arrested on the spot, charged with violating the restraining order and harassment. When I received the call informing me of her arrest, I felt a strange sense of vindication. It was over. Finally, it was over. Melissa would face the consequences of her actions, and I could move forward with my life without the constant threat of her interference. The court hearing was swift and decisive. Melissa's behavior had been reckless and dangerous, and the judge was not sympathetic. She was sentenced to community service and mandated therapy, with strict conditions attached to her release. If she violated the terms of her probation, even once, she would face jail time. It was a harsh punishment, but one she deserved. As Melissa stood before the judge, her face pale and drawn, I watched with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This wasn't the woman I had once loved. This was a broken, desperate creature, consumed by her own selfish desires. She had thrown away everything, our marriage, her career, her relationships, for a fleeting moment of excitement. And now, she would pay the price. After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse, the weight of the past few years finally lifting from my shoulders. I had fought hard, endured unimaginable pain, but I had come out the other side stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Melissa's influence was gone, her toxic presence banished from my life forever, but even as I moved forward, I couldn't ignore the impact this betrayal had on my relationship with Ethan. Despite everything, he was still my brother, and the thought of cutting him out of my life entirely was painful. But how could I ever trust him again? How could I look at him without seeing the man who had slept with my wife? One evening, after another particularly vicious attack on my character from Melissa, I received a message from Ethan that chilled me to the bone. "Daniel, I'm begging you. Let's talk. We need to fix this. It's tearing us apart." I stared at the message, my blood boiling with rage. Enough was enough. I wouldn't let him get under my skin. Instead, I responded calmly, almost mockingly, "Ethan, you've lost. Accept it. Move on. There's nothing left for you here." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a barrage of texts flooded my phone, each one more frantic and desperate than the last. "I'll ruin you. I'll make sure you regret ever crossing me." I smiled grimly, knowing that he was powerless to harm me now. The restraining order was in place, the evidence against him overwhelming, and his resources dwindling. He was trapped in a web of his own making, and there was no escape. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan's desperation grew. He started showing up at public places I frequented, hoping to catch me off guard and confront me in person. But I was always one step ahead. I changed my routines, avoided predictable patterns, and made sure to have security measures in place wherever I went. He was like a cornered animal, lashing out in frustration, but unable to break free from the chains of his own creation. Then came the day that sealed his fate. Ethan, in a fit of rage, violated the restraining order by showing up at my workplace again. He stormed into the office, demanding to see me, ignoring the protests of my colleagues. Security was called, and within minutes, the police arrived. Ethan was arrested on the spot, charged with violating the restraining order and harassment. When I received the call informing me of his arrest, I felt a strange sense of vindication. It was over. Finally, it was over. Ethan would face the consequences of his actions, and I could move forward with my life without the constant threat of his interference. The court hearing was swift and decisive. Ethan's behavior had been reckless and dangerous, and the judge was not sympathetic. He was sentenced to community service and mandated therapy, with strict conditions attached to his release. If he violated the terms of his probation, even once, he would face jail time. It was a harsh punishment, but one he deserved. As Ethan stood before the judge, his face pale and drawn, I watched with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This wasn't the man I had once admired. This was a broken, desperate creature, consumed by his own selfish desires. He had thrown away everything, our family bond, his integrity, his relationships, for a fleeting moment of excitement. And now, he would pay the price. After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse, the weight of the past few years finally lifting from my shoulders. I had fought hard, endured unimaginable pain, but I had come out the other side stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Melissa and Ethan's influence was gone, their toxic presence banished from my life forever. The days following Melissa's arrest were a blur of anger and confusion. I filed for divorce immediately, not giving her any chance to drag this out further. Despite her lawyer's attempts to paint me as controlling or manipulative, the judge saw through her lies. He granted me full custody of Olivia and Benjamin, citing her reckless behavior and repeated violations of the restraining order. Ethan faced similar consequences, losing his job, his friends, and his reputation. The same people who had once admired him now shunned him, disgusted by his actions. I tried to focus on my kids, shielding them from the worst of the fallout. They missed their mother, especially Olivia, who would ask tearfully when Mommy was coming home. Benjamin seemed more resilient, but I knew he was hurting too. I promised myself that I would do everything in my power to provide them with stability and love. Mommy is going through some stuff right now, I would say, hoping they wouldn't press for more details. Despite Melissa's desperate pleas for forgiveness and her threats to expose supposed secrets, I hired a cybersecurity expert to monitor her online activity. Any attempt she made to contact us was swiftly reported, and the authorities intervened promptly. She was trapped in a web of her own making, unable to escape the chains of her own creation. Ethan wasn't faring much better. He lost his job, his friends, and his reputation. The same people who had once admired him now shunned him, disgusted by his actions. He reached out to me several times, each time with more desperate pleas for forgiveness. But I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He had chosen his path, and now he had to live with the consequences. As the legal battles raged on, I worked closely with my lawyer to finalize the divorce proceedings, ensuring that Melissa adhered to the terms of the restraining order. Though the process was arduous and emotionally taxing, I persevered, driven by my unwavering dedication to reclaiming our lives. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects and expanding my business. I reconnected with old friends, rebuilding the relationships that had been strained by the turmoil of my divorce. I traveled, explored new hobbies, and rediscovered the joy of living life on my own terms. Slowly but surely, I began to heal. Years later, as I reflect on those tumultuous years, I realize how much they shaped me. Initially, shock and anger dominated my thoughts. Every waking moment was consumed by rage, every night plagued by sleepless hours replaying the betrayals over and over in my mind. How could they do this? How could they destroy everything we had built together? But slowly, the anger gave way to sadness. I mourned the loss of the woman I had loved and the brother I had trusted. There were nights when I cried alone in my room, letting the tears fall freely because I didn't want the kids to see me break down. I missed the laughter, the warmth, the simple joys of a family unit that was now irrevocably broken. Then came acceptance. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But gradually, I realized that holding on to the pain and anger wasn't helping anyone, not me, not the kids, and certainly not Melissa or Ethan. They had made their choices, and now it was up to me to move on. I focused on Olivia and Benjamin, on building a new life for us. I enrolled them in extracurricular activities, spent quality time with them, and made sure they felt loved and supported. Through patience, understanding, and unwavering love, I helped them navigate the complexities of our fractured family dynamic. Despite the hardships, I drew strength from my unwavering commitment to rebuilding our lives, determined to build a brighter future for myself and my children. I sought therapy for myself and the kids, hoping that professional guidance might help us navigate the emotional fallout of our broken relationship. The therapist provided valuable insights and coping strategies, helping us develop a framework for addressing our concerns and fostering a supportive environment. As time passed, I settled into a new routine, embracing the opportunities and challenges that came our way. I established new traditions, creating memories and experiences that strengthened our bond. My love and devotion provided a solid foundation for our growth and development, fostering an environment of love, security, and happiness. Despite the scars of the past, I found peace in the knowledge that I had done everything I could to protect myself and my children. We thrived under my care, developing into confident, compassionate individuals with bright futures ahead, and so, I moved forward, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that I had the strength and resilience to overcome anything life threw my way. I remarried Laura, who brought light back into our home. Together, we built a new family, one founded on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. We traveled, pursued our passions, and created memories that strengthened our bond. Through patience, understanding, and unwavering dedication, we forged a life filled with love, laughter, and joy. The end.